I don't know. I swear to God, I don't know. I go over it in my head every day. I dream about it every night.
In all the years as a cop, over half of all my cases were solved because the criminal did something stupid.
I don't know if I could take it mentally. I thought I could handle anything. I was wrong.
The guy died, put him on a gurney, he was gone, go about your business, keep working.
That's the first time I started taking photos.
Everybody knew. Everybody that was inside of that prison, they had the pictures.
They gave me thousands of pictures from Abu Ghraib.
Everyone tried to tell me, he's too old for you, he's a bad guy.
He handed the leash to Lindy.
I was blinded by being in love with a man.
How could all this go on without anybody noticing it?
The fear of the truth silenced people.
Next thing you know, shoo, boom, incoming. Everyone's yelling incoming. I thought it was a good guard. He turned out to be Fedayeen. Smile in your face, stab you in the back.
I took more pictures now to record what's going on.
We were told no pictures of prisoners.
Even though I was stupid enough to fall for it, I mean, he used me.
Obviously, they covered up a murder, and that would just make them look bad.
When you see a picture, you don't see outside the frame.
I just thought it was a bunch of schmuck MPs acting like idiots. I don't think so anymore. The big word that always comes up for me is surreal. Everything that you saw.
Errol Morris is an amazing documentary maker. You may remember relatively recently The Fog of War, and going way back, Cos and Gab, to a movie that we all loved called The Thin Blue Line. An incredible documentary filmmaker who now brings us this movie, which I haven't seen, Cos and Gab, so tell us about it.
Oh, this is a really haunting documentary. I said, get smart, you'll forget the minute you walk out of the cinema. This one will haunt you, this one will stay with you, and you will be wondering and perplexed about the state of the world. Now, Errol Morris sets out to explore the background behind the terrible photos of the torture and humiliation, the photos that were published from Abu Ghraib. Okay. And what he looks at is, how has this occurred? What situation do these people get themselves in that we document it with photos, and that the photos get distributed, and then he looks at, and who's been punished for it and why, and basically the question is it evidence of systematic abuse coming from US military from high up, or is it a few bad apples that have just carried out independent acts? Big question, and what happens in a society that allows that to happen? Now, he's got all the bad apples talking on the documentary. So you'll see Lindy England. She was probably the most infamous one in the photos. The photos were posed, you know, they were placed
in places. Don't you find watching it, they're showing a lot of the photos that they're still really graphic and provocative now, even though we've seen most of them. Watching them again, you go, gee, this is horrible stuff.
There are so many more photos than have ever seen the light of day as well. And to also find out that the guy who Lindy was dating and had a relationship at the time was the guy who was saying, you know, pose next to this guy with the leash and I'll take the photos of this, let's put all these here. She was in love with a man who was much older than her, and she was a 20-year-old untrained private doing this job. So you can see that they've been caught up by this, apparently the order to soften these prisoners up so that when the interrogators come in, they're ready to talk.
But this movie's whole indictment of the Iraq War, and the fact is that these people didn't know what they're doing, so they do come across, and you do feel for Lindy, and I do. She's a bit of a tragic figure, and she's very bitter. And Errol Morris has got his trademark crystal clear cinematography, beautiful cinematography with the interviews. It looks fantastic.
And awesome effects.
Yeah.
The things that,
he's been criticised for his dramatisations, but that's the trademark of Errol Morris. He does those. He did it in The Thin Blue Line. Yeah. He always does that sort of thing. So it's a very arty arty documentary. And I think the good thing that about this film is that Errol Morris has made it. If Michael Moore had made it, or some European film company, they're going, oh, left-wing propaganda, you know, trying to bash the American war effort. Here's a really respected filmmaker.
Indeed.
The probably most respected doco maker, contemporary, making this statement, and you walk away. Yeah. I was infuriated by it, because I guess how I feel is it's once again preaching the converted. How many people are going to see this movie? I know a lot of people go, oh, I don't want to see that. It's too
Or I
graphic.
already
It's
know
too
that.
horrible. I know what happened. Those guys, they were bad apples. No, they weren't.
And also the picture is really painted that the prisoners really were the architects of a lot of the terrorism. You know, this is what the privates were told. These are the people who have bombed US citizens, you know. But later they find out that no, in fact, they've just been rounded up from villages. Any male from, you know, basically of shooting age, any male aged over 10 has been rounded up and stuck in prison. And they even kidnapped children of wanted criminals and kept them in the prison in isolation and treated them badly and said to the leaders, we've got your children and, you know, you'll come forward if we do this. And that was all allowed to go on. And these people who were doing this job, what happens when good people go bad sort of thing, everybody let it happen.
Scoring.
Very interesting. Oh, it's a full price movie. It is really, you've got to see it because you only know half the story. You know whatever's in that frame, you've got to find out what's around it.
Gavin.
Yeah, look, full price plus GST. Errol Morris has gone from making quirky, indulgent docos to really important political ones now, which I think is important. As a film, it's brilliantly made. I guess my only criticism could be that there's not a lot of interviews with any opposition views to what happened, as far as someone, you know, saying
On behalf of the government.
on behalf of the government, saying this is above board standard operating procedure, but really worth seeing. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but get out and see it because it's an important film.
Well, I reckon one of the most indicting things, is that
Indictable.
a word? Was the analyst who was
Yeah.
told
Oh,
to
that's
decide
true. Who
from
was
the
just doing
photos,
his job.
is this cruel and inhumane treatment or is this standard operating procedure? And he'd say, well, that's cruel and inhumane, that one's standard operating. And you really get to see what's going
And you know
on.
the big thing is, if no photos were taken, we wouldn't know any of this stuff. But these photos were taken, out they came, and most of us are shocked and now sweeping under the carpet.
Basically, they've all been punished for being witness to this and for producing the photos.
Yeah.
All right, standard operating procedure. You can't go wrong with an Errol Morris documentary. Brilliant.